This is a video I've been putting off doing for a while now because I know Rolex makes people feel all kinds of different ways. And then on top of that, there are specific Rolex models that extra make people feel all kinds of different ways because of how unattainable they are. And if you're new or newer to watches, the watch we're talking about today is one of those unattainable Rolex models. It really isn't an easy watch to get at retail. We sat on a waiting list for years and years to get this one. But I truly think this is the best Rolex professional model. Or at the very least, it's my favorite Rolex professional model. Me saying this is the best Rolex sports model is extremely subjective. If you ask 10 different watch geeks what the best Rolex is, you'd get 13 different answers. But for me, the GMT Master II, particularly the BLRO, is this meeting spot of iconic storied, and it's a watch that defines its category. And for that reason, I want to talk about this watch. The watch I'm reviewing today is my husband's watch. And you know, on top of this being, in my opinion, the best modern Rolex, this is an incredibly significant and important watch for him. So my husband owned a GMT Master back in the 1990s. I'm actually sitting here telling you this story. He's just inside. Instead of you hearing it secondhand through me, I'm just gonna go get him and bring him out so he can tell you the story. It makes more sense.
Okay, Brit's just brought me into the garage and she's not asked me any questions or anything other than saying, tell your GMT story. So, back in the 90s, when I lived in Ibiza, there was a guy who owned the Cafe Del Mar and he had this amazing Rolex watch and I just fell in love with it. Real vintage one, you know, with the painted dial, with the plexiglass, domed plexiglass. It just looked amazing. Then when I got back to the UK, I decided I was going to get myself one. So I went up to Goldsmiths in Leeds. There was one in the window. I think it was £2,050. Went in, said, can I try that on? And bought it there and then. Yeah, very different times. And I love that watch. Wore it, it was my only watch. Wore it every day, absolutely loved it. But then I had to join the real world and get a job, and it wasn't a particularly well-paying job, and I had a daughter on the way, and it was just one of the things that I couldn't justify having anymore. So I think I had it 3 or 4 years and I ended up selling it, and my parents actually sold it for me because I was away at the time, and they sold it for, I think it was, I put it in the newspaper in the Yorkshire Evening Post for 2,000, and the guy offered 1,800 or 1,850, some lower price, because he said the bezel was faded. So the red bar had gone pink. It was a beautiful patinaed pink. It was, oh, mwah. Anyway. So my dad said, yeah, and that was that. That was my watch gone.
So ever since I've known you, you've wanted to replace that GMT Master. And I remember sitting on that waiting list for so long. Do you want to tell people about the journey of getting to this watch then? So you obviously sold your other one, which really sucks, but...
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I always wanted to replace it. And I was toying with the idea of replacing it with another 16700, but it wouldn't be the 16700. And then this one came out on this Jubilee bracelet, and I was just like, wow. It was amazing. But I didn't ask for it straight away. I didn't think I'd be considered. I was like, yeah, you know, I won't get it. So I just ignored it for a year or two. And I was just in the AD and I was just chatting watches with the guys in there and said, oh, do you know what? I really want to get that Pepsi GMT. Any chance I could put my name on the list? And they sort of gave me the usual spiel about, yeah, you know, it's really difficult, blah, 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 blah. The same spiel you've all been given 1,000 times, no doubt. But put my name on the list. I remember just saying to Brit over, I'm never going to get one. They're never going to, you know, what have I bought off them? I've only bought a Hulk off them. Not going to get it.
But what did I tell you? I said you were going to get that watch.
You did. I can't. We were in Scotland. Summer of 2019. We were up in Scotland. We were doing the North Coast 500. Worth a Google. Just doing some wild camping, and we got this call, and it was a guy in the AD, a guy called Sam, you could hear the excitement in his voice. And he said, "I've got something in the safe, and it's got a blue and red bezel." And I was in the passenger seat, Britt was driving, and it was on speakerphone. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And he's like, "Oh, can you come in on Friday?" I was like, "Mate, you're not going to believe this. We're up in Scotland." I said, "I could pay for it now, though. I can pay for it." He's like, "No, don't worry. It's your name's on it. It's your watch. It's in the safe." And I was like, I remember like we'd be climbing up these mountains in Scotland. I was like, "Britt, should we just go back? Because I don't want to miss out. What if they sell it? What if they're having a really crap Saturday?" And they're like, "Oh, we've got that GMT in there," and somebody comes in and she was like, "No, Sam said it's for you. It's your watch." I was like, oh. The gods were smiling on me because it started raining, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained. And I was like, "Britt, shall we just go back?" We just sat in the tent getting wet. And she said yes. So we cut the trip short, only by a few days at this point. Drove back down to Bristol and went in the next day and picked it up, and I love it.
So I think my love of the GMT Master II kind of came through osmosis through him, but it's a watch that I really can't find many faults in. Aesthetically, it is a striking watch with the blue and red bidirectional bezel, the highly legible dial layout, and professional handset. James has his on the Jubilee, which is a bracelet that's grown on me a lot. Some collectors prefer the Jubilee style bracelet, while other collectors prefer the Oyster style bracelet. There are no right or wrong answers, except Jubilee is right. I think it really elevates the model and makes it that little bit smarter, and for reasons unknown to me, I think it kind of makes the watch look smaller. Something else worth mentioning, the Jubilee might be the most comfortable bracelet I've ever worn. The tiny links make it breathable and just wraps around the wrist so perfectly. On the wrist, this is just a masterclass in size and proportion. Here it is on my 5.5-inch wrist, but where it really shines is on a 6-inch wrist or larger. I think it is the perfect proportions on my husband's 6.5-inch wrist. This watch has a case size of 40 millimeters, a thickness of 12 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug of 48 millimeters. So dimensions that really work for most wrist sizes, but it does not compromise on the specifications either. The GMT Master II has 100 meters water resistance and the Rolex automatic caliber 3285 movement. A few months back, I watched a Teddy Baldessar video on this watch, and there was something he said in this video that I just thought was so perfect. And I think this is why this is my favorite modern Rolex. He said, "It is a watch that defines its category with no peers." Although the Submariner might be the most iconic watch ever made, it still has some strong alternatives like the Omega Seamaster 300 or the Blancpain 50 Fathoms, which not only rivals Rolex in specifications but also in heritage. The Rolex Daytona is another icon with strong contenders in its category, like the Zenith El Primero chronograph or the Breitling Navitimer, or of course the storied Omega Speedmaster. You couldn't say the Rolex offering defines the category with these models. But when it comes to the GMT Master II, it is a model that defines this category or complication type. Of course, other brands have great GMT offerings. I think of Glycine, Longines, my personal favorite travel time, the Patek Philippe 7234 or the 5524, or even the Seiko 5 GMT, which was one of my favorite watches I reviewed in this last year. And they are all great. But when it comes to the bi-color bezel with the GMT hand, Rolex completely owns this category. In my opinion, the GMT complication might be the most useful one for most people, whether you're traveling for work, or maybe you make phone calls far away, or maybe you're an immigrant like me, so it's nice to see the time back home. Tracking multiple time zones is just cool. And you know, nowadays, I think tracking multiple time zones is something we really take for granted. In the time of smartphones and the internet, finding the time anywhere in the world is available with just the click of a button. But it hasn't always been like this. The story goes that back in the 1950s, Pan American Airlines approached Rolex and asked them to develop a watch for their pilots. This led to the birth of the GMT Master, and namely the first reference of this watch, the 6542, a watch that doesn't look all that different from the modern expression of the GMT Master II. With the rotating bezel, you can actually track up to 3 time zones, and I feel like this is kind of the perfect holiday watch with the 100 meters water resistance and the ability to track multiple time zones. I don't know why this is my favorite modern Rolex. I can't pin it down to a single reason, but it's a bunch of little reasons. I think there's the link of my husband's love for this watch and how much it means to him, and then the romance of tracking multiple time zones, and then it just being a watch that defines its category with these perfect proportions. I don't know. I just like it. I know it's a hard one to get at retail. I know everyone's going to comment about this in the comment section. But if you're on the waiting list waiting for one of these and you're feeling like you're never going to get it, keep holding out, keep waiting. Show your mug at the AD right now and just remind them you still want this watch. Because you never know, you could get it still at retail. Don't go with that mentality of, oh, I'm never going to get this, or no one ever gets these. Because it's not true. People do. And why not be you? Just show your face a lot. Come on, you're gonna get it. Keep holding out. Okay, I'm blathering on now, but I'd love to know, what is your favorite modern Rolex? Give it a comment in those comments down below. Don't forget to do all that YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, hit him with the Patreon song. Thank you. Thank you, Pope tier patrons. Thank you, Pope tier patrons.